Welcome to Red Deer Public Library's Travel Memories program for February 2022. My name is Priscilla, and I'm part of the programming staff here at Red Deer Public Library. I would like to, or I'm privileged actually, to start with a land acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation, I acknowledge that I live, work, and play on the Treaty 6 and Treaty 7 territories and of the Métis of Region 3, traditional and customary lands of First Nations and Métis people. And I'm so excited to welcome Debbie Olsen today, back for another visit with us. How is your winter going?
It's going well. Chilly day today, but
yeah. So we're lucky to have an inside job today.
Mm-hmm.
Just a few things about Debbie. She's a Métis Canadian writer and photographer, and over her, I'm not going to say how many years career as a freelance writer, she has won numerous writing and photography awards, and I think she's contributed to many travel guides as well, travel columns, magazine articles, newspaper articles, television and radio programs, as well as social media. And even more importantly, she's spoken to our Travel Memories group twice before, and just wonderful to have her back. The two previous times, and just to refresh your memory, first time was in person in January of 2020, when she talked about 4 amazing trips for wildlife lovers. That was inspiring. And then she was our first virtual speaker in October of 2020, where she talked about the Yukon. And right now, she's in the midst of getting her latest book published, 150 Unusual Things to See in Alberta. And I think she's going to share with us how glamorous it is to do the research and writing for such a book. And when is this book coming out?
I think it'll be in the summer of 2022, but it depends how long. The publisher, Firefly Books, prints their books in Asia. And last year with COVID, they had difficulty getting their books out of Asia after they were printed. So it depends how long that whole process takes. Maybe we'll be lucky and we see it in spring of 2022, or maybe it won't be till fall, but it's coming out soon.
It's in the process anyway. I think even with supply issues, sometimes we're hearing that there's difficulty even getting paper and toner and whatever, just to publish, the actual physically publish themselves.
That's true. And when they get the books back too, they were stuck for a while in their own warehouse out in Ontario because most of their staff had COVID, or so they had trouble getting them shipped from Ontario to bookstores. So it's been an interesting time for publishers. I just want to say thank you to Red Deer Public Library for inviting me to, and Priscilla for inviting me to speak today. I thought, since I've been working on this book about unusual things to see in Alberta, we might as well talk about some unusual things to see. I don't know if you recognize where this is. What I thought might be fun, if it was a live presentation, I would ask people and have them make their guesses of where each place was, but maybe you can do that just to yourself, since it's hard to do here. This first spot is called Red Rock Coulee, and the things that you're seeing there are called concretions. Red Rock Coulee is 49 kilometers southwest of Medicine Hat, and it has these massive red spherical rocks. They're as big as 2.5 meters, 2.5 meters in diameter, and they're scattered across 324 hectares of prairie landscape, which is a mass, think about that. 324 hectares, that's huge. They're quite an interesting thing to see and to photograph. It's a great destination for photographers. But how these came to be is they were formed in an ancient prehistoric sea. And what happened was organisms would die and they'd leave behind their shells or bones or leaves and things on the sandy sea floor, and it formed a kind of cement as it released, I put that in the slide and everything, it released calcite and iron oxide, and it began to cement the sand particles together. Then what happened was, of course, the sea dried up and the sand was left, and erosion began to happen. And of course, the loose sand particles all eroded away, leaving what's called the concretions. When we went there, we had the site all to ourselves. There was nobody else there. And I'd recommend going close to sunset. It's, you know, kind of the golden hour. It's the perfect time to take photographs. And it's just a beautiful and a very unusual landscape. It's hard to imagine that there was a sea in this place, and yet there was. The evidence exists. Another thing that you might see along your way, and we did to Red Rock Coulee, is one of these animals. Of course, it's a pronghorn. I will say that my husband and I have an ongoing argument about this animal. He won't believe me, most scientists today say that a pronghorn is not really an antelope. I know that we've called pronghorns pronghorn antelopes, but that's one of the names for them. But in fact, they believe that a pronghorn is closer related to a giraffe than to an antelope. I'll tell you what I do know about it, though. The pronghorn is the fastest mammal in North America and the second fastest mammal in the world. It's second only to the cheetah. And pronghorns can reach speeds of up to 98 kilometers per hour. What's interesting about the pronghorn is the pronghorn can run for long distances at high speed, whereas a cheetah, though it can run faster than a pronghorn, can only manage the fast speeds for short bursts of time. There's a theory that the reason that the pronghorns that we have in Alberta and other regions of the prairies are so fast is because there was an ancient cheetah that caused the pronghorns to develop their speed. So and that's also a theory. The horns of the pronghorn are also quite unique. They're kind of a cross between horns and antlers, and they have qualities of both. The sheath is made of keratin, but the horns shed every year. So anyways, I just happened, this is not going in my book. If I were including unusual animals in Alberta, I would be putting pronghorns in the book because I think they're interesting. And yeah, around Medicine Hat and Red Rock Coulee region, you're likely to see lots of them. We did. This is another, I thought maybe I would include a few places that you might see in the same area. And this is another one of them. And just in case for those of you who are guessing, it's called Etsicom Windmill Museum, and it's an outdoor museum, so you can visit it anytime. There's also an indoor museum that you have to pay admission for, but the outdoor museum is just always open, and there's all these old windmills there that are quite fascinating to see. It's located 85 kilometers southwest of Medicine Hat, and you could do what we did is do a nice little loop from Medicine Hat over to Etsicom, and then over to, Red Rock Coulee, and then back to Medicine Hat. And back in Medicine Hat, you might as well visit the world's largest teepee. That is in Medicine Hat. The world's largest teepee, I don't know how many times I have driven past the world's largest teepee and never stopped. I remember seeing it on the hill as we'd go through Medicine Hat, and I never actually stopped at the site until a few years ago. And it's really worth the stop. Inside, they have all these murals that tell the Indigenous history of this region. And behind the world's largest teepee, it's called the Same as Teepee, behind the teepee is an archaeological site that was used by Indigenous people for thousands of years. So it's really, really worth the stop. The world's largest teepee was actually built for the Calgary Olympics, and then it was ultimately moved to Medicine Hat, and they added some more features to it, but it's worth seeing. Here's another spot that I included in the 150 unusual things to see in Alberta. I absolutely love this place. If you haven't been there, it's in the far southwest corner of Alberta. It's called Writing on Stone Provincial Park. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site now. And I love the landscape here. There's a river that flows through it. And from this side, when you're looking across the river in the distance there, those are the Sweetgrass Hills in Montana. Actually, it's that close to the border. Lots of people like to paddle here. And if you're staying in Writing on Stone Provincial Park, they have a really nice campground. And they have some, if you're not a camper, they have comfort camping tents where they supply the tent. It's on a platform, it's got real beds, it's got it's comfortable. And it's got a barbecue, everything that you need to be able to camp without having any gear. So if you're staying at the campsite, there's a nice little beach that's right beside the river, and then you can explore the site. Besides the hoodoos, one of the most significant things about Writing on Stone Provincial Park is the rock art that's here. It has the largest collection of Indigenous rock art on the Great Plains. And the only way to see it, to see most of it or get a really close look at it, is to go on a guided tour. Most of the guides are actually Indigenous that will take you through, and they can talk about the symbolism behind the different rock art. This one in this picture is obviously someone recording wagons when this would be after Europeans came to this region. Here's some other images of the rock art that you'll see there. The Blackfoot people have long considered this site to be very sacred, and I have to say there's kind of a feeling about it. To the Blackfoot people, every stone and rock has a soul, it has a spirit, anything that casts a shadow. And with all of the hoodoos and unusual rock formations there, they've long felt that it was a place of great power. Many young Blackfoot warriors would fast and pray and go to Writing on Stone on vision quests back in the day. But most people believe that the rock art came from those warriors who were there, and that they did it. But the Blackfoot believe that it was the spirits that wrote on the rocks, and to them it's even more sacred. At any rate, if you've never been, and even if you have, it's a wonderful place to go. One thing I will say about it, if you're going to book a campsite there, it's you need to do it early in the season. As soon as they open it up, if you want to go in the summer months, get booked, especially if you want to stay in the comfort camping facilities. But even if you just want a regular camping site, it tends to book up very quickly. It used to be not very well known, but I think more people are coming to know it. Another option is to stay in Lethbridge. You could stay in a hotel in Lethbridge, and then you could drive from there. It's about 45 minutes or so, I think, to Writing on Stone. One way, and then you could spend the day and then head back to Lethbridge. It's another option if you're truly not a camper, not even comfort camping. But it is I love the landscape there, and it's a beautiful spot in Alberta. Oh, this one is, make your guess on where you think this is. It's the Alberta Birds of Prey Center, and I visited it for the first time a few years ago, and I really liked it. that, by the way, was my husband holding an owl there. But this place is Alberta's first privately licensed raptor rescue and conservation organization. It's located just outside of Coaldale, and it exists for the purpose to rescue, rehabilitate, and return birds of prey to the wild. There are some birds of prey that are so injured when they arrive at the center that they cannot be returned to the wild, and though they will live out the rest of their days there. So there's always some raptors to see, and there are some that are being rehabilitated and will ultimately be returned to the wild. So this is a picture of an eagle show. They worked with this eagle to have him do some falconeering. That's just a close-up of him. And while we were there, the manager of the place asked if if my husband and I would want to help release some birds. And if they ever ask you that, say yes. It was amazing. We went out to a coulee and got to release these birds back into the wild. And yeah, it's an experience of a lifetime. I loved it. I doubt that anybody will be able to guess where this is. So here you go. It's a place called Retlaw, Alberta. It's one of the ghost towns that I included in this new book about unusual things to see in Alberta. And one of the ones that I like the best. That's why I put it in this presentation. This is the cemetery at Retlaw. And I actually, if you go there, I recommend that you go to the cemetery first, because there's actually a binder at the cemetery, and there's a note in the front of the binder that says, if you come here and you want a tour, just give me a call. I'm right in, there's only a couple of people living in Retlaw at this point, but this person is ready and willing to give tours, to open the church up to you. And they had all kinds of history about the people that were buried in the cemetery, which I thought was really interesting. So my recommendation, head to the cemetery first. And then if you want that private tour, you could call that person and then you can go see the rest of it. Retlaw is located 13 and a half kilometers west of Vauxhall. It was named after Walter R. Baker, a CPR official. And here's what I like best about it. Retlaw is Walter spelled backwards. So in order to honor this guy, they took his name and named a town, but spelled backwards. The other thing that's interesting about Retlaw is, and the honoring of Walter, they didn't just name Retlaw after him. They named each community that surrounded Retlaw with one initial of Walter's name. So there's an R-E, R-E-T-L-A-W, and the W community never got built, but all of the other ones did. So all of these little communities were each named a name that started with one letter from Walter's name. It was built in 1913, and that was when the Canadian Pacific Railway came to town. And it actually was quite, they anticipated that Retlaw was going to be a major center. So at one point it had the rail station, it had 4 grain elevators, a hotel, a bank, a blacksmith shop, a pool hall, 2 churches, and several other businesses. So the big question, what went wrong with Retlaw? Because it didn't last very long, actually. What happened was irrigation came in the 1920s, but it didn't come to Retlaw. Retlaw, there were numerous crop failures for the area farmers because of drought. And when the irrigation was put in, it came to nearby Vauxhall and not to Retlaw. So the people moved where the water was. And that is basically why Retlaw died. Here's some more pictures of some of the things that you'll see if you visit there. It's just inside an old building. I thought it was interesting. This is the church. They have fully finished it. And apparently if you wanted to get married in a ghost town, I think you could do it here. You could also hold events there. And they've made these handwritten signs around different structures in the ghost town, which I thought was really nice and really well done. Okay, I'm not sure if anybody knows what this structure is and which specific one it is, but here we go. This is called Majorville Medicine Wheel, and the indigenous name for it is Iniskum Umapi. It's the oldest known medicine wheel to exist in the world. And it's one of the oldest religious monuments in the world. This structure is, it has a central cairn, and you can kind of in this photograph see this. There's a circle of stones that go around the outside of it, and there are 28 lines of stones that go out to the outer circle. The name medicine wheel was actually given by European settlers to these structures. You can find medicine wheels in several places. I think my next slide talks a bit about it more. This particular medicine wheel is 76 kilometers southeast of Blackfoot Crossing Historical Park. And I have to say, it's very, very hard to find. The first time we tried to find it, we got lost. Well, we sort of got lost. We got to a point where we reached a no trespassing sign and couldn't go on. So there's multiple, there's multiple dirt roads that lead to it, but some of them you can't cross because they're no trespassing. So it's a little bit tricky to find. We ended up getting taken there by 2 Blackfoot guides at Blackfoot Crossing. And when I spoke to them, they may be offering tours to Iniskamumapi out of Blackfoot Crossing next year. Also, they're open to people contacting them to ask them to take them to it. It is a bumpy road. You're going to need a decent vehicle to get there. We followed them behind in a truck, but I thought it was really interesting. They estimate that Iniskamumapi is about 5,000 years old. So the first stones in this, it's also called a geoglyph when you have stones that are arranged in a pattern. But they estimate that this one dates to about the same time that Stonehenge in Europe was starting to be used. It may have been built by ancestors to the Blackfoot people, or it may have been built by a different indigenous group. What we do know is that for thousands of years, the Blackfoot have considered this site to be very sacred. And also there's an entire, if you want to read more about this place, about Majorville Medicine Wheel, there was a book written by Gordon Freeman that you can get from the library called Canada's Stonehenge. And Dr. Freeman is from the University of Alberta, but he's probably spent more time studying this stone circle than any other scientist. It's his opinion that this stone circle is really a 5,000-year-old calendar, and he believes that it may have been used to mark the changing seasons in the phases of the moon. And I like this quote from him, so I put it in the slide. He called it the most intricate stone ring that remains on the North American plains. And so medicine wheels are found right across the northern plains in Montana, Wyoming, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. Those are the places that they've been found. And I'm not sure if you knew this, but there are actually 57 medicine wheels known to exist in Alberta. That's more than any other province or state in the United States. So quite interesting. This is what the central cairn looks like. And you can see in this picture, there are some little, the red and the blue, some things mixed in the stones. And what those are offerings. In some cases, they might be tobacco. It might be sweetgrass, or when I went, one of our Indigenous guides asked me if I had brought an offering, and I hadn't, because I wasn't sure if would be respectful, since it wasn't my site, you know, I wasn't sure if it was respectful for me to leave an offering, but he assured me that it was, and he gave me some fry bread to leave my own offering at the site, which was a unique experience, and I was grateful for him doing that. He talked about growing up, he would go to the medicine wheel once a year with his father. And he said that going there, he felt like it gave him balance. Iniskimamapi sits on a hill that is higher than most other hills around it. And you can see for about 100 kilometers in every direction from this hill. There's another shot of the stones. And this is also an interesting thing. So outside the circle, there are places where there are other stones. And some scientists think that these extra stones are just the results of a glacial moraine. So, and that they're just randomly placed stones because as glaciers retreated, they left stones behind. But Gordon Freeman believes that these were actually carefully placed, and that they are part of a giant sun temple. And he took all these pictures at different seasons and times of day. And it's his belief that they are part of a massive calendar. Anyway, this is a look at some of the stones outside the circle. Okay, if you're going to write a book about unusual Alberta, you've got to include the Torrington world famous Gopher Hole Museum. I had tried to go here several times, and I just never could get there when this place was open. But you know, since I was writing this book, I for sure had to go this time. So it's only 74 kilometers southeast of Red Deer, and it can be somewhat controversial with some animal lovers, but I found it quite entertaining, frankly. So they've got little dioramas. I thought the first one I'd show you was the Gopher Olympics, because, you know, well, we're about to be in the Olympics here again. And so they have little dioramas of gophers doing all kinds of everyday things. There's some gophers playing music, and they have some black gophers as well as some regular looking gophers. This is an RCMP. This one is made to look like the Innisfail Dog Training Center, if you've ever visited there, which by the way is also in the book. This is a little gopher version of it. This is the Torrington Fire Department. We've got a gopher hunter here. And I quite like this one. I like that the little gopher in the back corner has fallen asleep during the service. Anyways, if you haven't ever been there, I thought it was enjoyable. That's all I'm going to say. But it depends. You know, I could. Some people are offended by taxidermied animals, and if so, you want to avoid it. But I liked it. This site is actually close to Red Deer, and that's part of the reason I included it in the presentation. If you haven't ever been to Stephenson House, I highly recommend it. It's out near Markerville, so not very far from Red Deer. And you'll meet with, they have interpreters who are dressed in historical attire, and they can guide you through the house. And what I like about Stephenson House is the story about Stephen J. Stephenson, who they call him he's the great poet of Iceland. He immigrated from Iceland first to the USA, and then ultimately ended up near Red Deer out by Markerville. And he didn't start writing poetry until he was actually living near Markerville, and he had a homestead. And what I like about him is Mr. Stephenson suffered from insomnia. So he would go out and work on his homestead just so all day long. And most people were so exhausted, they had no trouble sleeping, but not him. He could not sleep during the night. And so to take up all of the time that he stayed awake, he began writing poetry, and he ended up publishing this poetry. He wrote it in his native Icelandic language, and he published it, and then it was published in Iceland, and he became famous as an Icelandic poet who lived in Alberta. This is inside the house. You can see some of the historic different items that the home were inside the home. And when my husband and I visited Iceland, I made a point of driving to the monument that honors Stephenson, who they call the William Shakespeare of Iceland. They say that if you can read Icelandic, which obviously I can't, that it's incredibly beautiful. But I have to say, they've translated some of his poetry into English, and in English it's wonderful poetry. And if you visit the website, you can read some of it. So I guess what I like about him and his story is that sometimes it's the trials that we face in our life that help to shape us into the people that we're meant to be and help us find our path. At least in the case of Stephenson, that was true. Oh, another place that we visited, it's called Mountain Park Cemetery, and it is Canada's highest cemetery. It's also a ghost town, by the way. Here's another couple of pictures of the cemetery in the ghost town. It's really well maintained for a ghost town cemetery, I may say. And I will say, so it's located 72 kilometers southeast of Hinton. It's just outside, about 15 kilometers from Katamin. If you have ever been there, it's a little village. And the road getting to Katamin is not bad, but the road from Katamin leading to Mountain Park Cemetery is actually really terrible. And this is what happened on that road. So we got out past Katamin, and sure enough, it doesn't look that bad in this picture, the road, but it's a mining road, and the gravel is really sharp. And sure enough, we blew a tire, but we were lucky, and there's no cell signal, so it's not like you can call AMA to come help you. I had something in my vehicle. I swear, every time I write a book, I'm definitely going to get a flat tire, because I got a flat tire on the last book too. Anyways, while I was out researching it, but I had something that a friend had given me after the last flat tire incident called Fix a Flat. So we used that to fill it up, and then we got back to Katamin, and there were some guys there that had their ATVs out, and they fixed our tire completely. They filled it up with air. They found out where the leak was. He put a plug in there. So if you do get my new book, there's a whole acknowledgement to this guy that fixed my tire in the book. I will say, at the start of the year, this season, I had said to my husband, I think we should change the tires. We were about to put the summers back on, and I said, I think we really should change the tires this year. And he was like, no, we can make it another season. And I'm like, well, we're going to be doing that book. We'll be on some roads that are kind of rough, and we might not have cell signal in places. I really think we should change the tires. And he was just adamant that no, we were not going to change the tires. So anyways, we did not, and we ended up getting this flat tire. And we had two more, actually. We had 3 flat tires within 24 hours. Yeah, I did do the cardinal mistake that you shouldn't do when you're married. I did at one point bring up the fact that I had said we should change the tires. And he was like, you just had to say it, didn't you? I know you should never say I told you so, but I don't know. Sometimes it's just really hard. Here's a few more. I do think, so have good tires if you go to this place, but Mountain Park Cemetery. But if you do, I think it's worth the trip. I thought it was fascinating. Mind you, I think cemeteries are interesting. I thought it was interesting to walk around and read the different epitaphs and see it. Worth the journey. If you're going there, you might as well go here too. This is called Beaver Creek Boardwalk. It's the world's longest freshwater boardwalk, and it's located in Hinton. The Beaver Creek Boardwalk is about 3 kilometers long, and it's not on the Guinness Book of World Records, but according to the town's website and several others, it is the longest freshwater boardwalk in the world. And the boardwalk winds through marshland and some fens. It winds through some forested area, and it brings you really close to an active beaver dam. So if you want to see the beavers, it's best to go kind of at twilight time. That tends to be when they're more active, or early in the morning. And there's lookouts, benches, interpretive sign, lots of beavers, lots of birds, lots of other wildlife along the way. It's a pretty little spot, and if you're going past Hinton, it's worth going in and seeing it. This is the area that goes past the beaver dam. It's my son and daughter-in-law in front of me. There they are. I made them sit on the bench to demonstrate how the bench worked. And there we are. They're going past some interpretive signage there. And another site that you might visit if you're close to the Beaver Boardwalk would be going to William A. Switzer Provincial Park. In William A. Switzer Provincial Park is a place called the Joachim Valley Trail. And on the Joachim Valley Trail is this abandoned airplane. It used to be used by the military for rescue training, and they just left it there. And now it's become this site that you hike to. And you can actually, if you wanted to go in the winter, they have ski trails that go to it. And there's a ski warming hut that's right nearby. But yeah, it's a nice little hike. It's not too far, and you're kind of seeing a unique site. Along the way, there's another cemetery, which is interesting. It's a really old one, and they, built these cool little teepee structures over top of the graves. So it's a beautiful little hike. Not far from there is also right in William A. Switzer Provincial Park. I didn't include this in my slides here. There's the site of one of Alberta's first beaver ranches. You could see the remains of a beaver ranch. I find the idea of a beaver ranch really amusing. It just conjures a lot of images for me. Anyways, that is also located in William A. Switzer Provincial Park if you want to go there. Oh, and I think I finished a little bit faster than anticipated, but I am open to any questions that you might have.
Well, one of the questions I have is, how did you come up with the title for your book?
Oh, well, that was actually an easy one. Firefly Books had produced a book. I think it was called 110 Unusual Things to See in Ontario. And so they had mentioned the idea of me writing one about Alberta, and I just thought, well, if they've got 110 unusual things in Ontario, we've got to have more in Alberta. So we're going with 150 in Alberta.
I can synthesize that. Actually, maybe we want to have you stop sharing your screen, and we can go back so we have our faces a bit bigger here. So another question I have, I didn't mention that you are from Lacombe.
Yeah.
And you don't have anything from the immediate Lacombe area.
Oh,
that you've mentioned. Is there anything? You on the spot here.
It's okay. I don't know about you, but my face on my screen is locked, but it's stuck. But hopefully it isn't on yours. I did include, I've got a whole section in the book of roadside attractions. I didn't include every roadside attraction in Alberta, but
No?
no, because that would be 150 right there. But I did include all of the world's largest ones. And in Lacombe, Lacombe is home to Len Thompson fishing lures, and we have the largest fishing lure in the world, Guinness record there. It's a 5 of diamonds. Have to say, I was this last summer, I was in the Yukon for a week, and someone handed me the room key. We were staying at this one little resort, and they handed us the room key, and it was attached to a 5 of diamonds fishing lure. And I said, these are made in Lacombe. Because Len Thompson Lures is famous for the 5 of diamonds. Anyway, and the world's largest one is a 5 of diamonds. So there you go.
Okay. You're out of trouble now.
It's all right. And I also included, Francis the freedom loving pig in the book. I just love, we have that statue in Red Deer of Francis the freedom loving pig.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I love the story of Francis.
You're not alone. It was around the world, I think, that story when Francis was wandering around Red Deer.
It's true. Well, Calgary had their own version. It was, I don't know if you heard about the turkey that was wandering through the streets of downtown Calgary. Turk Diggler, they called him. But yeah, in Red Deer, we had the pig. So.
And I agree with you about writing on stone. I have been there and canoed through there and camped, and it's a very special place. So I'm glad that you mentioned it too.
Yeah.
Question is, do you have a motorhome? And I think you maybe addressed that already, but you want to.
Yeah, I don't. We just, if we camp, we usually tent camp, or we sometimes, I have done the comfort camping thing. May I say, it's quite nice, actually. I've done it a couple of times with the family, and it was pretty great. But yeah, most of the time we're tent camping, or sometimes we hotel it, which is why I mentioned that you could stay in Lethbridge and make your way to Writing on Stone Provincial Park. But I think it would be awesome to camp right there, because then you'd be right by the river, and there's that nice little beach there and whatnot. And I know you said it too. Writing on Stone, there's like a feeling about the place. And when I went to that medicine wheel, the one that they call Aniskamumapi or Majorville medicine wheel, there's a feeling about it. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but you feel something when you're there. Maybe it's just a sense of awe at something that has existed for 5,000 years, or that has meant so much to Indigenous people for such a long time. And there's, you feel that same kind of sense of awe too when you visit Stonehenge, an ocean away, another circle that has mysterious origins. It's interesting.
I was interested, you said there's 57 have been found in Alberta. I had never heard that before. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think most people know that we have more medicine wheels than any other place in the world. I decided to only put the one in. I could have put in more, frankly, but I thought I would just highlight that one because it is the oldest known to exist in the world. So
special. So the raptor release place, that was very interesting too. But I noticed you didn't have gloves on and you were releasing that raptor.
I know, he gave me the option to wear gloves, but he said I was going to be okay without the gloves. So I thought, okay, it was a little exciting. Because I'm a bit uncoordinated too, so I didn't want to somehow not hold on well enough or something, but no, it was really, if you're there and they happen to be releasing and they would randomly, it was such a random thing, randomly offered the opportunity to go do it. It was an experience of a lifetime. And they're really dedicated to what they're doing there. So I felt like it was kind of unique and also a really worthy thing to talk about and to promote. So.
Oh, and the Gopher Museum. So I have too tried to get into the Gopher Museum in Torrington, and I want to know your secret.
I know you've got to visit their Facebook page to find out. I called ahead this time because last time I missed it by like 5 minutes. They had just barely closed, and so then this time I knew I had to get there because I was going to include it in this book. I mean, how do you not include the Gopher Museum if you're going to do this book about unusual things to see? I meing, it's got to be included. So anyways, yeah, we went and saw it, and I found it entertaining. Did
you have a guide? Like, was the
well, there was the person that operates it, and it was just Greg and me inside the museum taking our pictures of some of the dioramas. So
they had no problem with you taking the pictures, I guess.
No, they didn't. They're happy with. I did ask them about. They get letters regularly from animal rights activists that are upset with them for having these dioramas of gophers. So, but anyway, it hasn't shut them down yet.
Then the three flat tires. My gosh, that's a record, eh? That's.
Yes. And seriously, yeah, like, if you've been married for a long time, you know that you shouldn't say, I told you so. Like, it's something that you just try not to, but
it's irresistible. No.
Especially this.
Sorry.
We had this whole discussion. I'm like, I really, really think we should change these tires. And he's like, it'll make it another season. I mean, this from a man that he'd never had a flat tire in his whole life, so anyway, he can't say that anymore.
And he's brought his statistical average up by having 3.
Quite a bit. Yeah, what happened was, okay, so we got the first flat tire. We ended up having to go twice to the cemetery there, the Mountain Park Cemetery. So the first time we got the flat tire 10 kilometers outside, and we just turned around because the road was too rough. There's no way we're going to go any further. We've got no cell signal. We got back, we limped our way back to Catamount, and then that guy fixed our tire. So then we didn't go back there that trip, but we had a couple of other places that we needed to go. And on this other road, we ended up getting a different tire. It wasn't even the same tire that went flat. It was a different one. So then we were on the side of the road. I was calling AMA, and these guys pull over. I've got to say, Albertans are amazing. These young guys pull over, and they're like, would you like help? I work at OK Tire.
How lucky are you?
So they changed the tires. So now we've had 2 flat tires. We've used our spare. We no longer have a spare. We start driving because we're like, that's it. We're heading home. We've had enough. And we get on the side of the highway. We're outside of Edson. And the first tire that the guy had fixed for us went, so now we've got no spare. So I have to call, and we got towed into Edson. And it was like 5 o'clock on a Saturday night, and Edson closes down. It's a really small community, and it closes down for the next, there's nothing open on Sunday or Monday. We could have been stranded there for 2 days, but we were really lucky. We called, and the tow truck operator, because it's COVID times, normally you can't ride with the tow truck operator, and the AMA people explained that to me, and I said, that's okay. I said, I can see the sign for Edson. It says it's 3 kilometers. And I said, I can walk it. It's going to be fine. And she's like, no, that's not going to happen. Just wait a minute, because it's not like you can get a taxi in Edson.
A taxi.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. So anyways, they spoke to to the tow truck operator, and they came back and asked us some questions. Are you fully vaccinated? Do you have masks? And all of this stuff. And they said, okay, the tow truck operator has agreed to allow you to ride in the tow truck with the thing. So this was kind of nice. So in the meantime, I got on the phone and I talked to Canadian Tire, and there's a Canadian Tire in Edson, and their shop that could install the tires was closed, but they had the tires. The store was open, and I could buy the tires there, and they had 4 that would fit my vehicle. So that was a bit of a miracle. And then there's a Chrysler dealership. Their shop was still open, and they were willing to they didn't have the tires that would fit our vehicle, but they were willing to put on the Canadian Tire tires onto our vehicle. So, I mean, the tow truck driver was really kind. He took us in the cab, then he dropped us at Canadian Tire, he dropped off our vehicle at Chrysler, then he came back to pick us up. He picked us up and picked up our
Canadian Tire tires. I see you roll the tires down the road.
No, and took us back to the Chrysler dealership. The Chrysler dealership got our tires onto our vehicle, and we made it home that night. So, I mean, really, a lot of kindness. I mean, the first guy who fixed our tire, and then the second guy who fixed our tire, then the tow truck operator who went to all of these great lengths to make sure that we were okay. I mean, yeah,
the AMA person that you talked to too, right?
Yes, they were pretty kind too. Everything was, you know, we were really blessed through the the whole mess of it all.
And are these stories in the book at all? No.
They're in not about the flat tire, other than in the acknowledgements, I wrote something about the man who fixed our first tire. And truthfully, the second flat was while I was trying to, I actually wrote 3 books this summer, so which is crazy. Anyway, the second flat tire happened while we were trying to get to a site for the second book that I was writing. So there's an acknowledgement to those guys that stopped to help us in that book. And I've got their addresses. I'm going to mail them copies of the book when it finally comes out, when both of those
You're
come
on
out.
record now. Yeah.
I know. Well, I took down their addresses and everything, and I made sure I had their names spelled correctly. But yeah, we were really.
What are the other 2 books?
Well, so the other 2 books are the first book I wrote. I co-wrote it with Lee McAdam. It was called 125 Nature Hotspots in Alberta, and yeah, there it is.
I'm gonna plug it. We got it at the library.
Thank you. Yeah, a new one's coming out this spring. It's going to be called 200 Nature Hotspots in Alberta. It's a 2nd edition. So I was trying to make it to Sundance Provincial Park, which you'll note is not in the 2nd edition of the book, because I got the flat tire again and never made it. So if there's a 3rd edition, someday I'm gonna get myself to Sundance Provincial Park, but I didn't get there this time, so it didn't.
Glad that you haven't been everywhere.
Well, a lot of places, but yeah, in Alberta, all over the place, trying to see these different sites.
So I just had someone share with me that Nancy, that on page 159 of a Barbara Kingsolver book, there's a reference to Francis the Pig. It's the book called When Pigs Fly, 3rd in her trilogy. So Francis is everywhere.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that he's so famous. I just loved his courage. I wish he would have, it's unfortunate that he didn't live a long life at a local area farm, but oh well, I guess it was not meant to be.
It's a complicated story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So on a less jovial note, but I always get asked this about what kind of equipment you use for your photography.
Oh,
because your pictures are just amazing. And are you going to tell me you just use your cell phone too, or are you?
no. We do. By the way, I should have said this right from the start. Some of those pictures were my husband's pictures as well, not just mine. He's an avid photographer, and he's well published, actually. He's won some awards for his photography as well. So anyways, we shoot with Nikon, actually. But sometimes we do use our cell phones. Man, cell phones are pretty amazing now. We have like an iPhone 11s Pro S or something each. We both have those, and it takes some pretty good pictures. But other than that, we shoot with Nikon, and we have a number of different lenses and things to go with that.
Well, that's good to know. And your research, like to find all these things, is it just social media, people telling you, or?
No, it was really hard to, actually, it was hard to narrow it down to 150, may I say. I started out with an even longer list, and then it was like the publisher said, no, it needs to be, you've got to pare this down. And I don't know, some of it I was just, for one of the listings, for example, I was just thinking, and I thought, I wonder what the oldest tree in Alberta is. And I started it was just random, and I started putting into some research into what the oldest tree in Alberta is, and went and I found the oldest tree in Alberta. And I've got to say, it's really cool. I loved it. It was amazing to visit it. So anyways, some of them were just thinking about things like that. What are the, and some of the things that I knew about, and just putting in research. Some of it was social media, some of it was different things, and anyways, I'm certain that when people get the book, they'll think, why didn't you include this? Or why not this? I don't know. It was really hard to figure out what you were going to include as, the top 150 unusual things to see. I mean, how many roadside attractions should you include? I mean, yes, the Mundare sausage, definitely. The giant fish lure from Lacombe, absolutely. But like some of the other, do I want the Mr. Pinto bean from from somewhere else? Do I want this? It was so hard. Where do you cut that off? So anyway, I hope when people read it that they enjoy it, and that they find out there's all kinds of trivia and interesting things. I love the history stuff, and the stories that are behind some of these things. So I hope that people find things that they didn't know about places that they thought they knew well.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly
that's the case for this one. I have personally used it, and you lived a province all this time, and you don't, so many things nearby that you just don't know. Yeah. And as we were talking about before we came on, at the end of this book, there's some interesting lists that are like the best waterfalls, or specific things like that special interest lists. Mm-hmm. That are very I don't know, sometimes you're looking for a reason to go on holiday or go someplace, and that's a good way to do that. So. Yeah,
I in the new one thing that I'm happy with is got a list of accessible trails that people in wheelchairs or strollers or whatever, that everybody can access. And I thought it was important to include that. I mean, we had already in the previous edition talked about William Watson Lodge, which is especially designed for people with disabilities. But I thought, there's so many trails in the Rockies and around that, if you don't know where to go, or if you have challenges with mobility, where is it that you can go? So we included that in the second edition of that, among other things. But
well, that's good too. Yeah, everybody wants to be able to get out there, right?
Yeah,
in some shape or form.
Well, and I think everybody should be able to get out there, and I think that it's important that we acknowledge organizations and groups, places that are accessible so that it can help promote them so that there'll be more, you know.
That's true. Yeah. Well, this has been a delight. Thank you very much. And we always appreciate learning about how great our province is.
Thank you.
You know,
It's
sometimes we forget that.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure to be here.
So I just wanted to mention that next month, on March 2nd, we'll have Leah Hennell talking about her book Along the Western Front. So it's about modern cowboy heritage, and she too has different perspectives on our province. So look forward to seeing you all here then, and I hope that you have a great spring and summer, and maybe we'll talk to you next fall. Thanks very much, Debbie.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.